call this meeting. Are we up? Are we live? I guess I'll wait. Buffering. That's right. It's the 5-second delay in case something bad happens.
A wardrobe malfunction.
Yeah. Weak button.
Right.
All right, I'll call this meeting to order. Pledge allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is 1C, the consent agenda. Approve the items below, which are included in the consent agenda. 4A minutes, 6A policy, second read and adoption of new district mission and vision statements. 6B approval of the 2022-23 district strategic intents. 6C goals and objectives approval, 6D AV reductions, and 6E special education. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Second.
Second.
Anybody want anything removed?
You can go. Six yes.
Now moving on for the good of the cause. Do we have any emails?
Just going through the agenda and stuff, there are some abbreviations and acronyms that I don't understand. So through the course of the meeting, I'd appreciate anybody
It's a very
defining those.
Yeah, well, you probably aren't the only one who doesn't know what they are.
Thank you.
The education world is known for its fondness of cryptic language, so I'll try to do that. Okay, so moving on. 3A treasurer's report.
Hopefully, if everyone has had an opportunity to look at it, it's pretty standard. You know, there's not a lot of deviation from previous months in terms of our operating fund and cash sweep. I mean, that number of cash sweep that fluctuates depending on time of year. We're at the beginning cycle of a new year, so we're going on the upward trend as property taxes come in. That cash sweep will continue to grow larger. But a good portion of that is also tied to our unassigned fund balance anyway. That's where we put a lot of our excess cash in that cash sweep. As we're looking at property taxes, we're probably averaging anywhere from $500,000 to $700,000 that we're depositing each and every day. So it's going pretty smoothly. But otherwise, it's pretty straightforward in terms of where we are with the treasury reports. $500,000 outstanding in checks. That's not unusual when depending on the time of the month when a warrant goes out. 360,000 of that 500, as you can probably guess, payment to BOCES. So again, that's all in time and cuts. Any questions on the treasury report? Still in a healthy position.
Great. Budget status report.
So I decided I'd like to change it up every so often and give you kind of different formats. It's basically the same information. I've used this style before. Again, this time of year, there's really not a lot of progress because we're just 2 months into the new year. This is kind of like a July, August overview of it. So when you look at it, our expenses are pretty light. If you compare it from this current year to previous year, our expenses are up about almost 3% from previous years, from last year, really. And that's just, again, about timing. When I looked today, there was a difference of about $750,000 above this year and expenses than last year at this time. But as I said, that's really all in timing when it comes down to it. When BOCES starts asking for their payments, it starts July 1, but a lot of times we don't actually get the July invoice until August. So sometimes we see that double hit early on in the year because of that. But right now we're favorable when you look at our expenditures and all that in comparison. You'll see the bottom graph does kind of show you over the last few years where we are, and that kind of is a perfect example of how it fluctuates from year to year based on when salaries begin, payments and all that. The equipment line, you'll see 2020. That's a big negative, and that's just really kind of tied to when capital project funds come in and out. All of that. Otherwise, you'll see, our expenditures are up salary wise, a little down on contractual. Benefits are up about 400,000 from previous year. But again, that's just when we start making payments. I usually say it's every month. It's all about the timing as to when things get in. Revenue, it looks pretty straightforward. From year to year out, is, even though I can assure you, we have not collected $16 million yet in revenue. What we do is we put it up as a receivable. So that's why it looks like we've collected it. But we do that because we know by the time it's all said and done, that's what we're going to get. So between this month, next month, we'll get most of it through property taxes, and then we submit that to the county. And by April, the county makes us whole. Usually it's within that $400,000 to $700,000 range. Is that where the county, then the county goes after and levies that tax on the property owners. But every year by April, we get what we've asked for, either through the owners or the county making up the difference and then collected on their own. So revenue wise, we're pretty straightforward in terms of where we are, where we typically are this time of year. Questions on the budget performance?
Yeah, I know I emailed you about this. I still don't quite understand. In the historical revenues, year-to-date revenues, why is 2020 blank?
In revenues?
The
There's no chart.
Yeah, we probably, well, most likely what happened there is it didn't get booked, because we talked about this last year. We didn't put it up as a receivable until September. So this is through August. So 2020, we probably didn't put it up until a September receivable. So it's showing as zero because it looks at it from month to month. Like this year, August, last year's August, the previous August. That's why.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And was that when the state was withholding as well?
Most of our revenue this time of year is property
Property
tax.
tax.
Yeah, because if you'll look at that year-to-date state resource is zero. Last year we had 113,000. So we really don't start getting our state revenue until January into the late winter is when we start getting really more of our state funding. At this point, most of our funding is property tax.
Do you have an accurate projection of what that will be from the state?
Yeah, we build our budget. It's a little over $3 million. We
Okay.
typically get, it's where we're averaging between foundation aid and then various, textbook, computers, hardware, BOCES aid. So it ends up being a little over $3 million. Good questions.
Thank you, Dana.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on to information for the board. You'll see the document for the ECA accounts, which I think is the extracurricular activities
Yes.
accounts. There you go, Doug. There's one. And I knew that one, so I'm very excited about that.
Actually, I figured that one.
Oh, okay. And then there's some executive content there, some staffing issues. So please review that. Not now. And then next is superintendent's report.
Great. So as usual, lots of good activity happening district-wide, community-wide, and within our 2 instructional facilities. So I'll just kind of go and give you the gamut. Forecasting ahead, some of the projects that were dormant over the summer that we had hoped to complete, just hadn't been able to expedite them, in part just due to the delays in processing and COVID and things like that. But I know that we are anticipating having a new fence installed around our elementary school playground either this week or next week.
Yeah, they're starting today.
So that's
Yeah.
in the rain nonetheless. So that's a very good thing. There's always a concern if a student has a proclivity to run at an early age, to have that safety built in is important. So we're excited about that. At the elementary school, after-school activities have started to take place. So our clubs, which are chorus, band, Lego club, have all started up. And one of the commitments that we made to the after-school program, which is a nonprofit led organization, but is kind of a crown jewel of the district, is that we would guarantee them unfettered access to our gymnasium. And that allowed them to service an additional 15 families to provide after-school care for all of our students. So they're over 60 now, thanks to that. And we have a half day this coming week on Friday for staff. And the after-school program will be going on a field trip in the afternoon with those 60 students. So, and our staff who work in that additional capacity will be going on the field trip. So good partnership, good levels of flexibility with that program for the benefit of the students. We have some hiking going on in the coming week. Hopefully it dries up a bit. So on the 22nd, our 3rd graders are going to hike Mount Seymour. And on the 26th, the 4th graders will be going to the Adirondack Lodge. We've had a very successful open house at the middle high school, transitioning to our other instructional facility. So there were robotics apparatus on display that the students had created through the robotics club. The community schools coordinator, Keith Clark, was present to hand pizza out and salad to families. We had very positive participation from families, and all of our halls were buzzing. And it's really the first time that this has been done since pre-pandemic. So it was nice to get back into that phase. When we look at some of the exciting developments in terms of the community, there's a few I want to highlight. And some of these in particular, I'm grateful to the board for, because something that was brought up in a meeting led to kind of a thread that has subsequently led to more positive things. So in our last meeting, Colleen and Ron were mentioning in California some of the creative ways that the housing crisis is being addressed for communities, particularly with regards to education. So one of the boards that I serve upon, Homestead Development Corps, is in charge of the West Valley development that's currently constructing Cape homes and then townhomes. And after that meeting, there was a board meeting at Homestead, and at the end of that, there's going to be 18 townhomes that are going to be coming available, and they'll be available at August of next year. And the board has committed to securing 4 of those exclusively for district employees. And that will coincide with our hiring timeline. So if we do have retirements or new people that need to come into the district in May, they'll have ample time to have potentially 4 homes that will be part of that community. So thanks for bringing
That's great.
that up. That's good
So
partnership.
they're for rental purposes?
Those are actually ownership.
Ownership.
Yep. So another thread that was dropped at our last meeting was with regards to civics. So you had brought this up, Ron. And one of the ways that Keith Clark and the team have been trying to work through the community schools initiatives is to try and have some sort of spine that, kind of creates a bit of structure to a new formulation. I mean, the premise of community schools is that the school and different agencies in the community are partnering together for the betterment of all, and especially the students. And so we've sort of trended in towards a direction where the spine that we want to create, the structure around this work is centered around college and career readiness. And the more that Keith and I meet with different agencies, the more issues of workforce development and job filling within the community seems to be coming up. And so what we're taking the year to do is to map out all the different things we do to prepare our students to be college and career ready from K to 12. And in the process, partner with these different agencies to find ways to amplify the things we already do, or to provide something novel that we aren't doing but should be doing. That's in the wheelhouse of these different agencies. So like historically, Lions Club has been very passionate about supporting, eyeglasses for students, something that you brought up last time, which was another thread and I was able to look into. So I appreciate that. Rotary has their initiatives with regards to education. So there's all of these, there's the Lake Placid Education Foundation. There is the Uline Foundation, which has a premium on the advancement of technology in the region. So if we start to look at all these things and then tie them to different grade levels, then we can build a blueprint where years down the road, regardless of who's in the district, we're providing the same service for our kids. So how does that apply to civics? Well, being college and career ready has to also do with being a civic-minded individual and participating and being aware of the local government, state government, and the federal system. And so for our meeting in late October, early November, Mr. Clark is going to be here, and he's going to present to the board an overview of how we currently embed civics into the district. And we'll be open for suggestions in new ways that we can do that. There are some other good partnership things that are going on. I know I'm being a bit laborious with my time, but there's a lot of good stuff I just want to mention. So the Lake Placid Outing Club in the district partnered recently to submit a LEAF grant for the building of a gear barn at the elementary school. And this is something that probably couldn't have been done with fidelity prior to being in the community schools realm. But with Keith leading this effort, one of the goals we have is to have a network of school employees who are available to monitor our facilities in off hours so that people can utilize them more. And in addition to utilizing our spaces like our gymnasium and our music rooms and things like that, we want to avail the community and our students to resources that they may not have so they can take advantage of the Adirondack Park as well. So the Outing Club has an interesting situation where they have a bevy of high quality equipment and resources, bikes, kayaks, tents, you name it. And there is a storage issue that members of the board last year were apprised of when we had a presentation here. And so, we're hopeful that we secure some funding from the LEAF board so that that gear barn can be built, and that we can utilize community schools to staff that barn on certain designated times on the weekend, so families can come and take a canoe out or a kayak or a tent at no cost and enjoy the park to a greater degree. On another note, in community schools, we met with our insurance carrier. Dana and I met with our insurance carrier and our attorney to discuss the conditions for increasing the access of our facilities in a way that doesn't increase the liability of the district. We feel very confident that we have some good plans moving forward, and we are forecasting being able to start open gym for students and families in intramural sports in late November, trying to coincide with the snow flying so that there's a warm, large space for families when the weather becomes inclement. I mentioned briefly the work that Homestead Development is doing and that I've been able to do with regards to them. As they are putting these modular homes together, there is a need for labor. So I want to thank the BOCES Building Trades Program in talking with their new principal, Stephanie Murphy. We have found a way to coordinate to have our students who are in the building trades program come here during their school hours and have paid work on the job and assembling the homes that some of our staff members will ultimately live in. So that's a very promising situation as well. And the board, you have a packet of data here. And just very briefly, if I could walk you through, there's quite a bit. The first thing I want to say about this is that this data is all based on a test that is fixed. It doesn't move based on who's taking it. So that's important because the other sorts of data sets we're going to look at later in this year to try and gauge how our students are doing, those are adaptive. And what that means is, like, if I start answering questions in an online adaptive test in math, if I do very well, it will increase the level of difficulty of the questions. If I bomb a question, it will drop it down. And so this is not, in a sense, this is a blunt instrument of testing. I want you to be mindful of that. But I just wanted to kind of provide you with a few things. So if you separate the top packet, which has kind of the Cliff Notes version of this, which there won't be a test on, and this is just for your review whenever you're able to get to it. If you just look at the very first page here, for example. So there's 3 boxes that indicate different levels of performance. And in this case, this is on the ELA June Regents of last year. So the first one indicates, large box up top is about our performance as Lake Placid Central School. If we take a beat and go to the bottom left, then it compares our proficiency rates to the schools within the Franklin, Essex, Hamilton, BOCES. So we are one of the 11 districts that you can see the map behind Ron right there. We fall into the FEH BOCES region. So it's basically comparing our proficiency rates against the other districts within the region. And then if you go to the right on the bottom, then it says RIC levels. And the RIC is the Regional Information Center. And that's effectively all of the schools from the CAP region all the way to the border. And so it's a much wider swath. And so each of these, it's a way for us to try and triangulate our performance against other regional schools and a much larger region within the RIC. And the whole goal of this is to try and indicate where we are proficient and where we are not proficient. And so when we talk about high level performance, we're looking for level 4 and 5s from our students to indicate proficiency. So in this instance, the more blue and dark green we see, the better. And if we compare the size of those blocks to the others and we show more, then we're in a more favorable position. So there's different categories on all of these that I wanted to show you, but I also wanted to just highlight a few things from the Cliff Notes version before we move through the rest of my report. So on the front page is a summary effectively of how we did last year in this fixed exam that doesn't adapt to the answers of a student, how we did on that in the different categories. And one of the areas that I really want to draw your attention to, if you go to the third down regarding grades 4 and 8 science. So Lake Placid Central School, we perform better than every district and school within our region and within CAP region all the way. So when you look at top performance proficiency, science, our school is dominant. And you'll see that throughout as you look at those reports, which is outstanding. But when you look at some of the other pieces here where there's opportunities to grow, another thing that we're seeing is, and you look at the bottom, it says trend. Our proficiency rates, as students progress and they progress through their education, we see a reduction in proficiency in our students. And that honestly means nothing right now. It's just an observation. The reason it means nothing is because we don't know the fidelity to which our students are taking these tests. We don't know if someone's dog died that day, if they didn't show up, or if they made a happy face on the exam. We don't know the extent to which we are encouraging students to take this exam seriously. So one of the things I will say with regards to our science performance is that those exams have an academic component to the grades of the student. So if you take the test, it will have some degree of factor in the average that the student gets. And therefore, there's that level of buy-in on the part of the student. So that may not be the case in the others. So it's important to have the adaptive tests because those will be more reflective of the day-to-day instructional strengths of our students. And just to, there's 3 other reports, and then I'll call it quits and let you review this on your own time. So the first one is sort of a visual breakdown of the information already provided. So it shows all the different subject areas, ELA, math, science, and the Regents scores. And you'll see a yellow, a green, and a red. All right, so in this instance, the green indicates between our district, the BOCES, and the RIC. Green is we scored, one of those groups scored the best of the 3 groupings, us, the RIC, or the BOCES. The yellow indicates second best among that group, and the red indicates scored the least successfully in those groups. If you go to the next page, this is where things get really interesting. It's a breakdown of those same tests, and it's done by year. So now you can start to see, if you take a look at math, and you look at grade 3, for example, from 2022, you look at the percent proficient, and then you follow the proficiency levels down, and you can start to see some of the trends that were indicated in the summary report there. Once again, we don't necessarily know what this means, but just understanding that is existing gives us an opportunity to wade into it and decide, is this something that is reflective of student knowledge and proficiency? Is this some sort of practice that we are doing, or is there some need we're not meeting? So it's a starting point for us to begin our conversations with regards to data. So that gives you kind of a cross section of those. And then if you flip the next page, you'll see a Skittles colored paradise there. And that's a breakdown. But if you go to ELA, for example, and you go to grade 6 and you find the proficiency rate in 2022, so 57% of the students were deemed proficient on the grade 6 ELA exam. And then you go to 2021 and you'll see that the green is now at grade 5, and that's at 49%. And then you follow the green to 2019 and it's grade 4 and 36%. So this is a way to track cohorts of students from one year to the next. And so this starts to give us a sense of some of the growth patterns that our kids have over time. So this, of all the reports, this one gives you a sense of long-term trends. And when you're looking at this, you know, casually, if you're in need of something other than Dramamine at night, then from 2020 to 2000, you'll note there is no 2020 because that was the year of the pandemic when no testing even occurred. But just notice that 2021 and 22 are corrupted years by nature of the pandemic. So we can learn some things from them, but in the end, we want to pay attention to, you know, our baseline from last year. As we look at the data we get next year, how does this correlate? And is there a noticeable distinction or drop off from 2019 until today? And that's the pandemic learning loss discussion that's sort of permeating the atmosphere right now. So I wanted you to have access to that. Last but not least, this is a report about grade schools. So if you were to search Lake Placid online and you were a prospective person looking to move to the community and buy a home, you could look up school ratings and you know, you could assess whether or not, based on a variety of factors, the Lake Placid Central School District was a district you wanted to move to and raise your child in. And so the reason that I wanted to share this is because this gives a breakdown of all of the different things that they incorporate into the rating. Some of those things we have very little say in. So, you know, there's student progress rating, academic progress rating, and test score rating. Those are all based on these fixed tests that we have every year. So certainly if the focus of the district moving forward is to try and grow our enrollment and to you know, increase the outward appeal of the district for people looking to move to the community, then paying more attention to this information and finding ways to improve upon our you know, testing, that's going to increase our favorability rating with regards to the outside public. Some of these things, though, we have less say in, and so there's an equity rating, and so, you know, that has to do with the performance of our disadvantaged students, But it also has to do with subgroups that we do not have as much representation in here by nature of our population. And so to some extent, some of this information is helpful, and some of it is just baked into the demographics of the North Country. So this will be the first of a couple of different conversations about data, but I think it's helpful to have a sense of how our students are doing in certain areas, so you can see where our true strengths lie presently. And you know, as I mentioned before, our staff do an incredible job, and our performance in all of our science areas was really a highlight that I wanted to showcase with you. Last but not least, and then I will stop talking. I was contacted earlier in the week by the Wall Street Journal, and they conducted an interview with me about our move to unify the start time and advance the start time for middle high school students to times in line with pediatric and CDC recommendations. So in California, there is now a law passed that requires that schools do this sort of thing in adherence with what's recommended for optimal learning for students. And they were looking at a few schools throughout the region and the nation that have done this voluntarily, and thought it was rather neat and wanted to share that.
That's very cool.
That's my report.
Thank you very much, Tim.
Can I ask Tim, question on the upgrades to the computer systems,
Yes.
using strictly school devices?
Yep.
Are we creating more of a gap with the haves and have-nots that have phones that have data, have hotspots, and some don't, and some kids are, you know, all of a sudden, I can't use my phone, but I can, and
It's a valid question. I think it's an opportunity cost conversation for us, and one that can be a moving target. So, you know, ultimately, the recommendation to close off to non-school devices was a security-based recommendation from the Department of Homeland Security.
Right.
So the way that we try to bridge the gap for all students is by providing and issuing everyone a device. So in that instance, anything educationally a student needs to do, the school has provided access for that. However, the social aspect of this is certainly not lost on me or the team. And I think it's worthy of consideration to get a sense of what the true impact of that is. I suspect that there's a very real impact, you know, given that students are somewhat tethered to their phones these days. So I don't have a complete answer other than I think it's a good point and worthy of, you know, additional consideration.
just to bring it up.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Tim. Okay, 4A was under the consent agenda. Brings us to 5A, personnel consent. Recommended action: approve the items below, which are included in the personnel consent agenda. Items 5B, appointment of an extracurricular activity coordinators for the 2022-2023 year. 5C, mentor amendment. 5D, creation of position. 5E, consultant appointment. 5F, long-term teaching staff appointment. 5G, CSEA staff maternity leave request. 5H, termination of CSEA employee. Do I have a motion? Yes. And second? Yes. Would anyone like anything removed from consent?
Joe, did you second that? Okay, I thought so.
All right, so vote. Congratulations.
Absolutely.
And everything.
6 yes.
So 6 A, B, C, D, and E were all under consent. Brings us to 7A, linking goals and objectives.
I've got a bunch.
All right, read them off, please.
I know I'm inconsistent about doing this, but when I do it, it seems valuable. And most of it has to do with Tim's report. So students, first and foremost, the open gym, the Wall Street Journal, unified start time. Goal number 2, education, the after-school program and robotics. The college and career readiness and civics program developing as a result of community schools activities. Goal 3, the townhomes for district employees, that's community outreach and involvement. And then goal 6, finance, applying the leaf for the gear barn.
Who else? If you have any others, you can email them to Karen. She will wait upon bated breath.
Something like
What's the
that.
powers?
That's right, once the power. So that brings us to the second for the good of the cause. Chuck, did we handle all the acronyms that you needed?
I think so.
So. You have any emails? with you?
No.
So that takes us to the adjournment phase. We have the next meeting date, October 4th. We'll be in Wilmington. Put on your party shoes. And we'll be meeting in the town hall, correct?
It's the community center.
Or the community center. I've actually not done this yet.
It's on Springfield Road.
Yeah, off of next to the ball field. Great.
You should arrive early to get the Wi-Fi access.
That's true. Should we get a bus? It's over there. All right. We'll be experiencing how the
Do you have a
students.
driver in
And
mind?
we'll be- Well, we got time. We can get our seat license. Any other old agenda topics? Any new agenda topics? All right, that brings us to a proposed executive sessions, recommended action. Motion to go into executive session for the purposes of discussing LPAA negotiations, CSBA negotiations, and the lease of certain district property. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Thank you, Colleen. Over here. Let's discuss it.
Are you going to have Dan in the last part?
Yes, I'll be
For
back in.
CSBA? I
Well,
mean,
for
for the
help.
end,
Yeah.
with the very
Yeah.
end.
I'm gonna leave for the mill truck.
Right, so you'll write down the time that you come out.
So we're entering at 7:09. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, John.
Thanks,
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Dana. And thank you, Karen.